Let's take a look at some information and charts on REN for Brave New Coin. So REN is a wrapper or wrapping protocol that allows you to port over any token into any other chain. So the eventual dream would probably be to send tokens anywhere you want, to send currencies anywhere you want through any chain without incurring a taxable event, basically. For instance, let's say the BTC or ETH chains are backed up or super expensive to send. You can always send LTC, for example, right? We saw this in 2017. Send that value through LTC, get it to where you needed to get it, and then get back into whatever your desired crypto or token is at that time. But you incur taxable events when that happens. You incur volatility risk potentially when those transactions are being sent. So there's some issues there. The other thing is, if we can wrap all this stuff and have it play nice together, we can make DeFi just generally completely interoperable between all of the chains. So how REN is able to wrap things is through dark pools, which are master nodes. Basically, you can participate, I think it's 10,000 REN to create a master node. They get a staking reward, they get a fee reward, and I'll look at those nodes in a second, but you can see all the protocols that are starting to get connected to REN. I don't know how what REN does is necessarily legal because there's no KYC AML component like there would be for a wrapped BTC, for instance. And I'll look at those numbers as well in a second. But it looks like the market has issued, if that's the word. It's kind of ignored the regulatory risk, I guess. I mean, it made it to Coinbase, so it must be fine, right? But the more these projects can get sort of involved with everything else, be a massive player in all these chains, the more bullish for the underlying asset itself, in this case REN. So I like the idea the protocol works. Here we can look at the total value minted, and currently they're on 4 chains. I had no clue what Phantom was until today. Still don't really know. It's something, but REN's using it, so cool. But just like with Aave, we're seeing multiple versions, multiple chains. The on-chain metrics are going to get more diluted between everything. There's clearly a winner here in Ethereum in that that's where most of these mints are sitting, but there's 39 million on BSC, 15,000 on Phantom, 206,000 on Polygon. And when you start to see minting and burning on multiple chains, there are going to be issues arising on multiple chains. There are going to be ARB opportunities, flash bots, exploits, the list goes on and on and on. The attack surface gets bigger. That's always something to keep in mind. As bullish as being multi-chain is, it's a lot to keep up with, right? If you're a dev or if you're using this protocol, you have to be reliant on the devs, that they're up to speed with issues on all these chains and not just Ethereum. The total value bonded here, we can see it's 183 million REN, so that works out to be 18.3% of the total circulating. So there's some inflation here, some fee rewards changing hands as well. But there's currently 1,830 master nodes, and the more, they call them dark nodes, but effectively they're master nodes. The more of these, the better, because then that soaks up the supply, prevents any immediate selling pressure, right? As long as a token has a job other than being bought and sold, then there's a higher chance that price will go up. And if we look at the integrations, it looks like a lot of it's on Curve as well as some burning components, but you can see how they are slowly getting integrated into more and more protocols and even within DeFi. So the tentacles and tendrils are spreading out. If we look at TVL, it's a bit deceptive, because if we look at DeFi Pulse, it has it down here at 385 million. If we look at the bank, it's around 100 million. So I don't even know what to trust, because that doesn't even jive with the values that are on their own website. So I don't know. This is an issue, obviously, when you're trying to figure out what's going on with TVL, because generally a rise in TVL should be more bullish than bearish on balance. More chains, more bullish, blah, 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 right? Like the more, the better. The same thing with these on-chain metrics. These transaction values just continue to decline to multi-month lows, almost multi-year lows. But is this the whole picture? This isn't just a governance token, so there's definitely things going on with REN on chain that should show up here if people are using it. So you definitely want to see that transaction count rising instead of just continuously falling. Average transaction values also falling. Not really telling you much in general, but just less and less activity across the board. If we look at active addresses, they're also declining in a big way back to pre-June 2020 levels. So that is definitely not bullish for REN. Somewhere in here, they switched over to allow the BTC, the wrapped BTC stuff. It was probably mid-2020. Can't remember the exact date, but you can see how people started to use it and then didn't, right? So you don't want to see that if you're bullish. NVT continues to decline, which says relative to on-chain activity, we're kind of oversold and or it's a good buying opportunity relative to the historic levels. So on-chain metrics certainly don't look bullish. And I mean, ultimately we can compare REN BTC in the green here to wrapped BTC, which is like the above board version of REN, centralized, KYC AML, generally probably where the legitimate volumes are going to go, because anything that's multiple millions is institutional typically, and anything that's institutional has to abide by regulations, including KYC AML. So this WBTC market share continues to grow relative to REN's shrinking market share, but that's also something to pay attention to. If this goes multi-chain, if this takes off in some way, I don't know. It doesn't looks like the market's given up on REN in the near term, especially relative to wrapped BTC. Even if we just look at the REN BTC supply, it just continues to decline. So they're going to need to continue to innovate, I think, and do stuff that people care about in order for the underlying token to even hold its value at this point, because on the USD chart on technicals, there's a bearish 5200 cross for the first time since mid-2020, and it's already retraced its January breakout, but now it's risking retracing its 2020 breakout, right? After we establish these levels on the way up, those are the levels that everybody's watching on the way down. So we may consolidate on the way down in the 20 to 60 range cents. But if everything remains bearish, for the most part, everyone is looking at this 3 cents to 10 cent level as far as support. And if we look at that a different way with some annotations, we had this inverted head and shoulders from 2019 to 2020 that broke up. We had another triangular consolidation that broke up, and now ever since January, really, it's okay, February. So we'll say February. Really hasn't been able to hold on to any highs whatsoever. It just has looked weaker, quicker than anything else in DeFi for the most part. And even here, it doesn't look too great. This could paint some sort of double bottom W thing, but far below the cloud. Tapped its yearly pivot on that sell-off. It tapped the triangular consolidation point on that sell-off. So between these two yearly pivots, 30 cents and 60 cents, it's just a giant no man's land probably until Q4, when this thing's back above 60 cents. It's probably ready to be bullish again. But otherwise, you just got to expect what the VPVR is telling you, which is where most of the volume here is sub 13 cents, even sub 6-7 cents, and relatively nothing in the volume perspective at these highs. So at the very least, you have to get back above the 200 with a bullish cross, back above the cloud. Right now, the expectation is just doom. REN ETH crossed bearish mid-April and just free falls from there. Bit of a W on price with a bull div, but it's hard to just hope that this turns bullish when the USD pair looks like it looks. And even the BTC chart looks tragic, ready for a return to 500 to 800 sats, something like that. Most of the volume is back in this range. And if you look at these old 2016 alts that did something like this, even Ripple broke up a couple times and then just sort of like bleeding at its consolidation lows. So REN's still worth keeping an eye on, I think, in the grand scheme of things, if they continue to innovate and the market approves of those innovations. There is an uptick in integrations across protocols and platforms. There's a burning mechanic with fees, I believe. So they got some things working for them, but their biggest competitor is the regulatory aspect of things, even though they are on Coinbase and on a bunch of chains. Wrapped BTC is clearly winning out over the decentralized version at the moment, and technicals on the USD pair just look bearish in any way I can try to look at them, and ETH and BTC pairs look incredibly bearish. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio that I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance non-custodial portfolio management. You can see AUM, allocation, all the trades I make done through DEXs. I had to cut REN a few days ago at this point, probably a week or two or more. You can look at the history here. Here it is. So I traded REN for USDC on the 16th of May. So that was one of the early ones I let go just because it looked way worse than everything else. But that's the beauty of this sort of thing. Not only am I saying it's bearish, but I'm showing what exactly I did on the DeFi portfolio. And you can deposit either USDC in the smart contract, or you can just watch to see what I'm doing. So that's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.